Well, there are a growing number of her supporters calling on Chief Theresa Spence to put herself and her family first now that the Harper government has agreed to move forward with a process that is centered on Aboriginal treaty rights. That was at the center of her protest, which is now in its 41st day. And Chief Spence is with us now. We've agreed to her request to be supported by two elders, Raymond Robinson, who is also fasting, and her colleague from Attawapiskat, Danny Metatawabin. You've had several chiefs, elders, many of your supporters discuss with you this weekend that idea that you have done what you wanted to do for your people. It's time to take care of your family now. You told me you have 5 daughters. Will you end your protest now so that you can take care of them?
Well, like I said, I go day by day, and I'm still waiting for that meeting that needs to take place. That's with the Governor General and the Prime Minister and the two levels of the governments with our leaders, because this meeting is required. Like, it's really important for all the leaders of Canada to sit together, including the First Nations, because in our communities, there's crisis in our communities, which the government knows about it for so many years. For example, Sheila Fraser put recommendations since 2000. And in the recommendations, it was about infrastructure, housing, clean water, better health, and better child welfare system. You know, like, these immediate needs is required to work on immediately. If not, then our crisis is going to get worse in our community. Like, we're living in a third world conditions where the people don't see, like Canadian citizens don't see it, but we are living in it. And we're living in Canada, and this is happening.
Yeah, I don't think many people would argue with that point, that there are, especially in the remote communities, that the situation for some people is very desperate. When you say you're taking it day by day, does that mean when the Prime Minister agrees to the meeting with Sean Atleo that you will return to your family at that point?
No, when you say national chief, like, it has to be all leaders, not just the national chief. I keep saying that.
Several other chiefs who are willing to be
all
in the
the chiefs that like. It's important for the leaders to be there. Like, if they have to sit in the audience, but they need to sit there and support the national chief and their regional chief or tribal chiefs.
But why, as a mother, I don't know of any parent that would voluntarily deny themselves the care of a mother for any cause, no matter how just.
Well, if you experience what we live, you know, as a person, and as a woman and as a mother, you would do anything to protect and make your children, other people's children, your people in a better living condition. You would, because the pain is too much now.
But do they express to you, Mom, you've made some progress here?
I had a talk with my girls. I told them what part of life journey takes us, and that means losing a loved one. And then I explained there are times like, if this is my journey, then I will complete this journey, but they're not going to be alone. I'll be there with them in spirit, and my partner's going to look after them and their sisters and their families, so will be there with them. And they're never alone. The Creator's with them every day.
And if one of them said to you, Mom, stop it, would you?
Like I said, I would have to explain to her again why I'm doing this, because it is their future and your children's future too. It's about Canadian and First Nations.
I want to talk to you about the role of the Governor General, because one of the things that you have been saying from the beginning is that he has to be in the room when the chiefs or the chief meet with the Prime Minister. He's largely a ceremonial figure now in Canada. He has no real authority to change the lives and improve the lives of your people. The Prime Minister does. So why is it so important that a figurehead be part of a meeting?
We view his role in a different way. Because when this treaty was signed, it was with the Crown, and the Crown put the Governor General to protect us and honor the treaty.
But they were negotiated with bureaucrats and politicians.
Yeah, I understand that, but it's important for all the Crown, the treaty partners to be in that meeting. That includes the Crown. So if he's representing the Crown, he should be there. He has that role, and the Crown promised us that she will protect our rights. If there is any violation of this treaty rights, there will be consequences. But now, all these years, the government has been violating the treaty rights, and the relationship is being destroyed as we speak.
The Prime Minister, though, has agreed with Chief Atleo and some of the other chiefs to move forward on exactly that basis. That from this point forward, the big discussion at the highest political office in the land is going to be about treaty rights and about dealing with your people as nations.
But respectfully, they're only an advocacy group and they don't really represent treaty and non-Aboriginal treaty rights. So that's why we're trying to have this meeting to work together in harmony with each nation, the nation to rebuild that nation. So the Governor General has to be there along with the Prime Minister to meet with representatives, First Nations leadership or representatives from each treaty organization.
I'm still confused, though, because if the meaning of the protest was to get that process underway, that process seems to be underway. Not fully underway, I grant you that. But if that process is underway, then what is the meaning of the protest now?
Well, you know, the mistake they made that meeting on January 11th is it was called a working group. We didn't ask for a working group meeting. We asked for nation to nation. Like, why is the Prime Minister and the Governor General afraid to meet with us? Like, we have every right to call this meeting because there's too much damage in that treaty, in the relationship. You know, they're getting away, and what does it take for them to come and meet with us? Do we have to take them to court to ask for a meeting? Like, we're trying to give them an opportunity to correct the mistakes they've been doing to our First Nations.
Are you familiar with the declarations of the United Declaration of Indigenous Peoples?
In the United Nations?
Yeah,
A little
bit. Those are not being honored by Canada, and if I may, those declarations are guided by affirmations, concerns, recognitions, convictions, as well as reaffirming our rightful place here in Canada that respects our treaty and non-treaty rights without discrimination and in true justice and fairness. Article Section 2 states, shall provide for effective mechanisms for prevention of and redress for talks about cultural values and ethnic identities. Any action which has the aim or effect of disposing them of their lands, territories, and resources. And further, Article 32, Section 2 states, states shall consult and cooperate in good faith with the Indigenous peoples concerned through their own representative institutions in order to obtain their free and informed consent prior to their approval of any project affecting their lands or territories and other resources, particularly in connection with the development, utilization, or exploitation of mineral, water, or other resources. And there are 46 articles altogether.
So do you agree that a first step has been taken toward redressing some of the problems that have been plaguing treaties?
No, I don't feel that way because it was only a group of chiefs and the national chief. Like he explained to you, what's the role of the national chief. So it's, you know, it's really critical for this this meeting because the way the government is viewing our chiefs, like he doesn't view them with respect and honor. He see them as what do you call it, puppets. You know, like, you know, even our own people are losing faith in their leadership. And it's not the leadership's fault, it's the government, the way he treats them. And maybe he's been a chief in the political for so many years, maybe he could explain some of the experience he had with the government.
Well, the one thing the Canadian government, the Canadian in general, cannot seem to conceive is that when the treaties were signed, it was on a nation-to-nation basis. One government to the other government, one country to the other country. That's how these treaties came about, on a nation-to-nation basis. Royal Proclamation of 1763 states clearly that we are a sovereign nation. King George recognized
isn't
everything.
there recognition of that now? Isn't the Prime Minister saying, I get it, I will move from this point forward on a nation-to-nation basis?
If he gets it, why did the Bill C-38, Bill C-45 come into play? Because and also other forms of bills that are coming in. Bill S-2, the matrimonial property rights, and Bill 428, the Indian Act, and bills. That's going to take control of every facet of our lives. If you say that he understands this, why is he taking everything away from us? The understanding is that we had a treaty relationship with the Crown, period. Not with Canada. We never signed treaties with Canada yet. That was one of the conditions Canada was to play a role when it repatriated itself to become an independent country. but that has never taken shape yet, and we're trying to get that to be honored, but without, it's not progressing to that point. It's regressing. Instead of building a treaty relationship with us, it's taking our treaties and everything that goes with us as a nation of people. King George recognized the sovereignty of everything that our governments, our institutions, our way of life, recognized it. It's all in the Royal Proclamation. And we are a sovereign nation, and Governor General is still, though he may be symbolic, a representative of the Crown, he still has a vital role from our perspective, because we did sign treaties with the Crown, not the head of the government, which is Harper.
All right. One of the things that we do on this program is we hold leaders to account. We question how they spend the public's money. You're a leader in your community. You're an elected politician in some ways. There was an audit done on your band's audits, on your band's finances, and they couldn't come up to any conclusions. Why weren't better records and receipts kept to be able to satisfy the auditor?
Well, I'll explain what happened with his audit. I was disappointed when he came up to the media, because when we had a report back in September or August, we had a meeting with the Indian Affairs Department, and the regional director was there. And we heard the recommendations from the audit, and they explained what was the lack, what needs to be improved. So after, when we all were having discussions, we said it's good that we have this comprehensive audit. It's a learning process for both parties, the Indian Affairs and the First Nation. And the what do you call it? I mentioned to them, well, it's it's good to see where we need to improve, and we will comply with the recommendations. And
So going forward,
yeah,
we'll keep more
let me
receipts.
finish. Yeah,
we
let me
will
finish.
keep better.
And I told him, like, okay, we're going to comply with the recommendations, but we don't want you to use this against us. We want to have a better working relationship. And they said, yes, we will. We'll promise that we're not going to use it against us. So this is why I was really disappointed to see it on the media. In that audit that took place, we asked for forensic audit when we were going through the third party process, but they said no. We will do a comprehensive audit. And I asked why. They said, well, it's going to take too long if you do a forensic audit. We'll stick to the comprehensive audit. And, so they came to our community 5 days. And they left for another week, and they came back 5 days. Like, when you do a comprehensive audit, it takes months. It doesn't take 10 days. And and there was documents in the warehouse, which they didn't even go look at it. And the staffs were busy that time because we were in a period of that third party situation. Like, it was a witch hunt for the court that took place on April 24th.
So you took the audit, though, and you said, okay, this is how we can do better. We'll do better at record keeping. We'll do better in keeping our receipts.
Yeah.
But as a political leader, would it not make more sense to not have someone that you have a personal relationship with as your co-manager to provide more transparency and that kind of thing?
Co-manager was hired by the rest of the chief and council.
Yeah, I didn't hire the co-manager. It was the council, and Indian Affairs approved it. And people knew I had a relationship with the co-manager before I was elected. They knew I was in a relationship with him. So
There are politicians, though, in this building all the time who have to make decisions that have the appearance of doing
the
better.
co-manager, has a role to the chief and council, not to me as a chief, to the council members. He put recommendations, and the council approve it. We have a conflict of interest and policies in place that we comply with. So
You think you're not in any conflict of interest there?
no, because like I said, it's the council members. Everything goes to them. I don't vote on it by myself. It's the council members.
Okay.
And it's hard,
If I may, you're alluding to the Bill C-27, the First Nation Transparency Act. Now, I've been thinking about this Bill C-27. The government wants us to be transparent with every finances that we do.
Right.
but yet it's not very transparent and accountable to what he does to us, the First Nations. Take my community, for instance. Each community across Canada gets a per capita basis funding formula from the government. For every child, for every human being there is registered at the bank registry, we get a certain amount of money. Now, the funding formula that is being used in my community dates back to 1982. We haven't had any increase on a funding formula basis since 1982.
And you've had an
Ba-
explosion in
back
people.
then,
right?
we were only about 3,000 people.
Right.
Now we reached beyond 8,000. So we have to carry these 5,000 extra population that increased over these 3 decades with the money that we get still that 3,000 per capita basis. Now, how would she be able to serve and provide basic needs of housing, infrastructure, economic, social development, health, policing, and everything that goes with it, just to provide the basic needs of our First Nations? We borrow almost on a weekly basis just to try to provide the basic needs of these people. Now, if only the government of Canada can be transparent of how he treats us and with respect to their funding formulas. For instance, the Treasury Board, Public Treasury, provides money on to private companies, and we don't get ours. The corporations, factories extract our resources on a daily basis. As we speak, they're doing it, and they're taxed to death. We don't get a percentage of it. It goes all to the government, to the private
To
interest.
provinces, and then
Yeah,
you get
yes.
and then you get a section of that.
We don't get nothing.
Well, I mean, in the diamond mine, there is some money that flows.
I
to
don't,
the
I don't
band.
come from a diamond mine.
No.
We don't get nothing.
And I know they don't get nothing. If they did, their condition would be the way it is right now. People living in shacks.
Okay, we've talked about treaty rights. We've talked about your protest being day to day. I know you were visited, you said, by a nurse practitioner this week about your health.
Yeah.
Did she tell you how much weight you've lost in these 41 days?
I lost over 30 pounds now.
How have you felt that? Do you feel it on your rings?
Yeah, mostly all over, especially, my rings, my clothes are getting really loose, and I could feel it, just by walking.
And for those Canadians out there who are doubters, that don't think you've actually gone through this process, what would you say to them?
Well, there's always